The first.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Good morning, George.
Hey, George.
How are you?
There.
Ed, are you still? Yeah, it looks like you're still in Georgia. Good.
I am in Georgia. You are right.
It's good to see
I'm
you.
gonna be here until Monday.
And then you're going to Florida?
No, I'm coming back to Columbus because the group that's in Florida is going back to Ohio. The group in Mexico is coming back to Ohio. It's like
Got it. I wonder what microphone I'm on here. Okay, great. You know, maybe we'll use this guy.
Like a studio you created.
It's well, the microphone gives, I don't know if you guys can hear the difference, but in the recordings, the difference is profound.
Oh, yeah. Your M voice.
Ladies and gentlemen, somebody joked about that on a recent recording. I don't know. Yeah, this is my profound chest cold voice.
Oh, that's what it is. Oh, sorry.
How are you, Larry? I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. Yeah.
I'm happy you can make it. Ed, but we're putting the band back together.
The band. Yeah.
Steve, how are you, man? Kathy Bradford. Kathy, Kathy, you were the 100th member, the 100th member of the Growth Drive community.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh,
Number one, my undying affection. How's that?
And Ed would be like number one.
I believe Ed may have been number one. I'll have to go back and see who the first person who joined was. But that's a milestone.
So long ago, we forgot, right?
Yeah. Well, we stood up this community in, when did we? I'll have to go back and look. I'm sorry, guys. My head is in such a fog. So anyway, what's going on in everybody's world? Oh, stunned silence. Larry, we might as well get this on the table. I worked yesterday afternoon. I spent the afternoon redesigning, maybe that's the rearranging, reconfiguring the launch course. So this will be news to, maybe not news to Ed, but news to Steve and to Kathy, is we're taking, what do we want? What do people come to us for, right? What do people come to us? They come to us for knowledge, right? For training. They come to us for tools, most of which is now in the technology. Phil Gafka, get out. It is official. We are putting the band back together.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, man. I was just on the phone yesterday. It is Tuesday. My God, it feels like Monday.
It is already. I
was on the phone yesterday with a guy named Dan Whedon, who is also a pro. I forget the name, but he knew. He's like, I know that name. I'm like, well, you should look him up. So I'm going to introduce the two of you guys today.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
He's up in Seattle. Good morning. He also wrote a book about using golf as an analogy, but not about exit, but about business risk. So,
very good.
Anyway, wow. So I lost a whole day. Head cold. I stayed home yesterday. Anyway, we're going to evolve it. So we're going to people come to us for this training, and part of what we get high marks on is ways to approach potential clients and current clients, and ways to work with them in a more broad fashion. Get out of consulting and get into advising. And so what we're doing is we're actually layering Fearless 1, hey, good morning, Joe, into the launch course, and which is actually a little harder than you'd think. But anyway, and then we're going to upgrade we're going to put those two certifications together. So Fearless certification was 1 day, and Growth Specialist, which many of you have attended, was 2 days. We're turning that into a 2.5-day event. And that's actually on the books. I need to sign the contract today for May here in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where it's about 70 degrees and sunny. So,
George, do we have dates yet for that May event?
We do. Here, I'd be happy to share those with you. March, April, May. Larry probably knows them off the top of his head. He's smarter than I am. 29, 30, and 31.
Yeah.
Is that Memorial Weekend?
No, sir.
Well, right after.
It's right after. Yes. Memorial Day is the 24th, right?
Monday the 27th.
Yeah. It's not a
Weekend.
Monday, 27th, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right after.
After.
Is it an all day? We need to be there all day on the 29th? Are we starting? Just trying to figure out travel plans.
All day.
Kathy, I will be able to answer that question by the end of the week.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
In all likelihood, we will start at 8 a.m. and end at noon on Friday, so that if those people who are crazy enough to leave town on a beautiful May weekend down here in Charleston, but people do want to get home. So, but I'll confirm that before the end of the week.
Okay, awesome.
Hey, Silvana, how are you? Wow, we have a great crew we always have a great crew. We have an especially big crew this morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to see you. And I'm sorry I missed last week. I couldn't help it, but I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Awesome. Happy to have you. So what's on everybody's mind? What's going on? Phil, what prompted you to say, you know what, I'm going to waste a perfectly good hour of my life?
Actually, I clicked on the wrong button. No, just kidding.
Me too.
I just wanted to check in. I won't be able to stay for a full hour, but I wanted to just check in, see how everybody's doing. I'll be visiting Charleston next week for a little golf.
Well, hopefully we can at least have a cup of coffee together. Where are you golfing?
I have no idea. My buddy, this is the time that, I didn't set this one up. They did. I just have to show up.
Nice. That's the best kind, right?
Exactly.
Very, very cool. Well, you know how to reach me. Let's coordinate. I'd love to see you if you have time, right? No pressure.
Once they tell me where I'm supposed to be, I'll know that I can get back in touch.
Okay, perfect, man. Very cool.
I'm reading an interesting book right now.
Yeah, what are you reading?
The Coming Wave.
Okay, Mustafa.
And it's all about the coming wave of AI.
Oh boy.
Very interesting book.
What have you learned, Phil?
Wow. He's not doom and gloom, but he's not like all good. I mean, it's amazing the speed at which AI is coming at us. And he said basically the people that are in denial are going to be in for a rude awakening because it's coming fast, and it's coming hard. And just there was a statistic I'd have to look for it real quick. But some of the stuff that he talks about, just amazing. And I don't want to waste time here going through it, but just interesting reading. Mustafa Suleiman is the author, and it's great reading.
Very, very cool. I will. I just put the link. Lord knows what all that other tracking stuff is, but that's the link to Amazon. Yep, I will be adding it to my
Me too. I have not seen that one. I just finished 2 AI books, and I'm actually doing a little project that has to do with AI, and I find it very interesting. So I'm doing a little project with one of these big companies that just Microsoft. And we all know ChatGPT, but there are certain things we have to do. So when we use the ChatGPT, you just have to go from your tool to another tool to do your research or to do whatever it is to do, and then go back. And we are scratching the surface what can be done. So I was in a meeting because it's fully integrated. So it's for everybody that doesn't know around the table. And I'm not trying to tout Microsoft or what they're doing. I was just at awe. It took me by surprise. And I've been in the AI, cybersecurity, and blockchain for a while between the business and technology. But it took me by surprise because I'm in this meeting and I'm trying to catch up, and everybody's throwing all this abbreviation, and I'm new, and everything is a sort of a shorthand talk there. And I get this pop-up on Teams that says, do you want to list all the list of topics that were discussed here?
Oh.
And I'm looking, and it's Copilot. It is their embedded ChatGPT 4. And honestly, between all of us here, the next meeting, it didn't turn up. So I went looking around to try to figure out how to turn it on. But I had taken my own notes, and I looked at the notes that Copilot gave me for that particular meeting. And oh my God, there were so many different already predetermined prompts that it just gives you, and then you can do your own. But it was very helpful. So I think that I agree with Phil. I haven't read the book. I've seen everything else. I just think that it'll be so wonderful if we have the right narrative for AI and the right analysis and the right things to worry about, but also to figure out what is it really good for and how can we use it in day to day, and how can we make it part of our lives in the right way,
it's
in a responsible way.
It's interesting, Silvana, that that's one of the key questions. So I think everyone's probably already figured out. I don't know if you guys have experienced it. I live in a Google world. So Google has put Gemini into everything, and it's still clunky. It's AI, right? It'll learn. But there are a couple of tools out there that leverage AI really well. One that I've been using a lot is called castmagic.io, and you can upload a video, and that video they have the prompts. It's cool because it has the prompts to generate all sorts of stuff from a transcript, and then a sizzle reel, keyword, meta tags, notes, chapters, all of that you can also take their prompts. They open up to say, hey, if you want to fine tune one of our prompts, help yourself. Just there's no going back, but you can. So I would check it out, guys. Castmagic.io. If you do either audio recordings and or video, it's very cost effective and very, very, it's cool. It's cool. You'll see. Get their onboarding. Their onboarding is included and it doesn't cost anything. And it's a quick, they do it in groups. So you'd have a group like this and we all just listen. It's not very interactive, but AI is interesting. It won't surprise you that we're layering AI on top of Clarity, which is interesting. It's not as easy as it sounds, right? But anyhow.
Well, I watch Sunday mornings. I watch Reed on CNN, and he interviewed the author of that book. It was a fascinating interview. But this past Sunday, he had a segment about Phil Collins, and he hasn't recorded in years. I think it's Phil Collins.
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel, that's right. Billy Joel, thank you. And they showed using AI. He did a segment. He did some type of a video showing him at different stages in his life. And it wasn't even Phil Collins, it was the producer. And it was very interesting to listen to.
It was. I saw that segment as well.
We did.
Barry. Yeah.
Well, thank you for correcting me on the.
Well, it was only because you were saying it, Phil Collins. I said, wow, I just saw something Sunday morning similar on Billy Joel. And I realized.
Yeah, it was Billy Joel.
It was
Billy
the same
Joel.
thing. What Billy Joel did was he partnered with a young guy whose name I don't remember fully. And that young guy, I just went to castmagic.com. And right on the homepage, you scroll down a little, is a list of all the management and executives and key people for Cast Magic. Not a single one is 40 years old. I don't know what the average age is on this call right now. I'm 63. And I think what I'm hearing, Phil and Silvani and everyone else, is it's not about us questioning this. It's about us as quickly as possible accepting it. Because once we accept it, our minds are open to learn it. And I'm just getting there in that acceptance. I've used it, but now knowing that this is the way of life and people who are 35 and 40 who are driving business are driving this.
Yeah.
Well, the other point of this book, and I haven't gotten to that part yet, is containment.
Yeah.
Is, worldwide, let's face it, everything that we have that's good, there's an opposite side of the coin, and somebody can find a nefarious purpose for that. And it's, where does the world come together and try to put some type of, limit on this? The one thing he points out that, we have put a limit on worldwide is nuclear arms because they're so devastating. Other than that, everything else is pretty much just running its own way. So part of this book is about how to contain all this. Not sure it's possible, but it's an interesting because it could run amok.
It probably will, and we'll learn from that which is an unfortunate reality, right? How did we learn that we needed stop signs or crosswalks? Yeah, Phil, that's fascinating. Thanks for bringing it up. I posted here, guys. This link is the YouTube link is Farid and Suleiman.
Oh, all right, cool.
Fire it up, but of course it's on YouTube. So yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Are you constantly being pulled in every direction while you search online for the perfect funnel for your coaching?
Somebody else clicked on it too.
That's
Another.
me. I'm trying to.
How many of you are familiar with Ray Dalio?
I'm not.
No.
I just read one of her newer books, The Changing World Order.
Yeah, that's a very good book.
Excellent book. Goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years and chronicles the rise and fall of kingdoms, empires, dynasties, and, basically where the U.S. is now in that natural cycle of things. And if there's like 6 checkpoints, we're probably at 5 point something, coming to the end of our run. Interesting reading.
That is right up my alley, Phil. I'm going to devour this one. Okay. Why nations succeed and fail.
Yep, it's a keeper.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you're correct. We are nothing good comes when the global peacekeeper. If you think about the end of empires, the end of transformative republics, nothing good comes, and that's unfortunate.
What may be obvious to most slipped by me. We really didn't even have countries until the early 1700s. Everything was dynasties, kingdoms, empires.
Yep.
Very interesting reading.
18th century.
Yeah.
That is, and you know what? My sons, all three of my boys, they're about to get this in the mail because they share this kind of geek fascination with me. So, okay, that's cool. Okay, impromptu. Thank you, Phil. Impromptu book club.
There's a lot of good stuff out there.
There is. There is. You know, it's interesting. AI is good. I think I would caution people, you know, you can generate blog posts with AI. You can generate all sorts of content with AI. But when we read it, we also lacks the depth of thought. It doesn't quite mimic what someone sitting down and writing and editing and thinking will produce. So it can produce a, you know, the general stuff. I'm sure AI can write an entire book that's carefully thought out, et cetera. But what we're getting in these snapshots that we're getting in our working lives is it only has a certain amount of emotional depth. And you can tell when you read someone's blog post, it's like, you know, I don't think he or she wrote this.
Well, to that point, the guy that wrote Sapiens has another book out as about the 21st century. He said what AI lacks is consciousness.
Yeah. Speaking of which, and I will share this. Some of the discoveries that are being made right now about consciousness are fascinating. Who's read A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson? If you have not, you must. It is a must read. Again, my boys, I use my boys as kind of you know, they've all read it. I think Jack has read it 3 times. Jack's my middle. It is a fascinating book. And I can't recommend it highly enough. A Short History of Nearly Everything. But what the discoveries they're making right now about consciousness there was one article was so complicated, I had to read it 3 times to sort of gain a 10% understanding of the concept. You know, these are Mensa smart people, and it was either in Smithsonian or Nature. I'll dig it up. But Phil, you bring up consciousness, and AI doesn't have consciousness. And when you understand consciousness, AI cannot have consciousness. There's some really cool discoveries being made. Yeah, some really cool discoveries being made. So,
well, George, we have discussed it. We have discussed reading these type of books and other books, liberal art books, history books. Helps, you know, how does it help us in what we do? It helps us relate behaviorally to our business owners and have different types of conversations, connect with them in different ways than just straight up business content. And I think it served many of us well. And when we get together, we make our book lists, right? The financial books, the leadership books. But I think some of these books should be in our list when we hold our training, because it how we extract from those books ways of relating to our clients and differentiating ourselves from others. And that makes us really trusted advisors.
Yeah.
Culture code.
Yeah, guy. You know, I'm Larry. Thank you very much. That is a fantastic point. And I like all of you, I'm sure, are huge proponents of a liberal arts approach to the world, right? A liberal arts education, nothing to do with the politics of liberalism. By the way, liberalism is conservatism, but don't get me started. But a liberal arts perspective on the world is incredibly powerful. And one of the things, and there's another, I doubt I'll be able to find it, but I was driving to go duck hunting at 3 a.m. and I was listening live to the BBC, and it was the British equivalent of the Secretary of Education. It was an American, a woman American professor at an Ivy, I forget, Princeton, and someone else, a gentleman from India. And they were so we have, those are all liberal arts, but the thing that confounded the Indian and the Brit, and they said it out loud, like, why do you Americans invent so much? Why do we? Are we a wealthy nation? Certainly, but what is it about our educational system? What is it about our interests? What is it about our culture that causes us to be one of the great inventors, probably one of the greatest inventing cultures in the history of humankind? And it's that liberal arts, they really zeroed in on the fact that we have really embraced an open, a more open curriculum, et cetera. But Larry, that's a fabulous point, guys. And imagine going into, imagine the different perspectives you bring to the table. If you show up and all you can do is talk about the P&L balance sheet and the cash flow statement, you bring important information to your client. But when we put that in the context of the business, and then we put that business in the context of the market, we put the market in the context of trends, well, we're bringing incredibly powerful information. That's probably going back, Phil, to your opening point, where AI can help us to rapidly do research, like topical research. Thanks, Joe. Joe's favorite current. That's a great book. So I don't want.
That's a good. Yep.
That's a great book. I don't. It is a great book.
Oh.
And by the way, this 100 trillion coming from, our liberal small L capitalist system that is frankly, Phil, to your point about 5.5, that is in danger of being destroyed. But anyway. Oh,
Joe, we can't hear you.
On mute, Joe.
Joe's muted. He's still muted. Larry, but you're right on target. We have
Is that it?
Yeah, you got it. You got it now.
So what my point was that 100 trillion transfer was reflecting with one of my CIOs and COIs, and then really the conversation around, do we know how to handle this next round of investors? And this was a named Sam, and who on the team? He's 65, and he's got to start bringing along some of the younger generation, all accountants with him, to relate to the new, the second, third generation that's coming into this wealth. And oh, by the way, they're going to have a whole different look at it. So it was made for a really robust conversation, and it continues to set yourself apart from some of the other services that are out there. So we're all lifetime learners here. So I love the sharing today. And that $100 trillion wealth transfer is just a really different way to look at future investors, and then those people that are going to receive the benefits from our work.
Yeah.
Do we know beyond what the owner's wishes are versus the the people that are going to inherit the wealth? Would that be important to know in our role, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting. Ed, go ahead, because before I jump back up on my stump. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think Larry mentions it, and Philip brings it forth too, and that's why have such a hard time, that they are so embedded in only numbers and business perspectives. They don't see the rest of the entire entity. And the one thing that I've always tell these guys and gals, and that is, when you look at a company, look at the business. Don't look at the numbers. Get to know the business, walk through it. I'm sure, like Steve, when he wants to talk about selling one of these businesses, if you don't walk through it, you cannot understand what are the performance dynamics that occur and that would make that business so meaningful to a prospective buyer.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Ed, that's something you and I have taught for years and years. I'd love to go back and figure out when we taught our first class. It's got to be a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But getting a tour of the business, and the difference between touring a business with the CEO versus someone else. And yeah, that's a fantastic point. One of the things that we as a community do, right, when we sit down and talk with a CEO or a business owner for the first time, and this goes back to my first point about evolving the launch course, we want to have that growth conversation. We want to have a bigger conversation. We don't show up as a marketing guru or a financial guru or what have you, saying, okay, well, whatever your problem is, I'm a hammer and it's a nail. We show up and we say, okay, well, let's talk about the business in the context of your life, right? I'll just shorthand it there. And by doing that, we're already having a different conversation, and it's a conversation that every professional is capable of having, right? That every professional should be having with their clients, and it changes the way that we are seen as advisors and elevates us from being consultants. If you had a better marketing program, all your problems would be solved. Well, we all know that is probably partially true, but it needs to be true within the context of the whole business engine. And you're making an interesting point, Ed, that kind of supports our worldview as growth drivers, that that we need to look at the whole business engine.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, Larry. Guys, if you have any suggestions, let's post them in the community, maybe as a comment to this coffee Klatsch, which I'll post probably later today. But if you have books that you think are non-business books, but that would be really relevant to people, and no, not really tangentially relevant to change, to add some fresh thinking to what we do, please post them, because we are lifelong learners, right? 3.7 credentials on average. It's very cool.
Well, I took that average down.
Cutting
George,
down the average, Larry.
I'm using one finger. Okay.
George, it's funny you said that because earlier when we're talking about the books, I didn't want to interrupt, but I was thinking maybe it's worthwhile for us to create our own bibliography. When I talk to people out there about what I do or what I am trying to do, with business owners or in general in the practice, it's very difficult to truly the concept. And I know the value growth quarterback, it's meant to do a little bit of that. But I think the other thing that I figuratively explain is, and our medicine system is broken. We know it. And if people don't realize it, it's very hard to find a general practitioner anymore around us. But I feel like the direction we're going, we are the equivalent of a general practitioner when it comes to business growing, like starting, growing, and selling a business. And I think that a general practitioner, a high-end concierge general practitioner, that's how I see our equivalent, because we're there, just like George said, not necessarily to go too much in depth, but to be the glue and to be the person that understands and has the relationship where we can actually help diagnose, like figuratively speaking, the areas that need addressing and bring in the right people or send them to the right people to do the tradesman part.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that lands, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't quite figured out how to differently explain that, but I feel like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put together that practice that actually takes care of that.
Yeah,
what do you guys think?
Absolutely. It's being the architect and the general contractor, and we want to stay in that general contractor role, which, Silvana, you make a fabulous point. Is the very reason why I personally advocate against getting into subject, even if you are a subject matter expert, getting into those subject matter areas. I think your point's very, very well made, Silvana. Thanks.
So let's take that to the real world about general contractors. And typically they will engage in the finished work product. So it's that last piece to push it over the edge. Finished work in trim work, any sort of finishes they tend to want to handle and control, because that is the last thing the customer sees. Mm-hmm. So is there a lookalike piece to our thinking that we need to understand, and how to make sure, if we don't possess the ability to do it ourselves, that is like the kick-ass resource we use, because that's the last thing people remember.
I think that's a great point. That's a great point, Joe. And everyone will have a different perspective, right? I immediately think of business flow and helping them install a scorecard inside the execution leadership system and saying, okay, let us please every Monday, let's have our scorecard, our business flow. And you and I, Madam CEO, are going to discuss it for a few minutes, and I'll call you over coffee, and we'll just check in. And if we can do that, who here has used a scorecard and, help the client install the scorecard? Okay. And who here thinks that it is, how would you rate, guys, chime in. How would you rate the impact that has on the client?
I think the biggest thing that the clients discover is that they don't need to be doing as much pushing and driving as the owner. Instead, they let the team pull the horse. So, I equate it to, one Clydesdale does not pull the bush wagon. It's four. And if they're not in sync, it doesn't go straight. And the only person who keeps it straight is the driver on top of the wagon.
Collaborative accountability.
That's how I rate it.
I love that, Ed. That buggy wagon analogy fits AI almost perfectly, right? Only separated by 150 years. I'm only teasing you, Ed, but that's a good analogy. And I find the scorecard not only for that purpose. That's number one, but it's a leadership team alignment tool. Mm-hmm. So it begins where you started, Ed, and then it goes to that. You could talk with our clients about collaboration, accountability, and all the corporate buzzwords we use, right? And there's others. All you want, you never get it. It doesn't change. So the tools and the methods we use help our clients, as a byproduct, achieve that accountability, that alignment as a leadership team, that collaboration, that interdependence. And the scorecard is that connective communication tool that does that.
Yeah.
And so that that's my number one theme this year on execution is developing scorecards with really good KPIs that matter.
Yeah.
And the key is a lot of organizations have discovered that if you get the good KPIs, then you can easily put an economic tie-in and group competitiveness in each functional area of the company without having to have them compete with each other, but instead function within their own entity. How well are they contributing to optimizing that function within the organization? And an example is that it works beautiful.
Yeah. At your son's business that I still talk about, that I still, even though I haven't been there in a few years, I'll bet he's still I bet he's still thriving.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Ask Joe. Joe was there and saw the scorecard they have up on the wall, and they're not bashful about letting everybody stand on their own 2 feet. And one of their top performer showed up at the memorial service a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't even realize he was their top performer because I didn't really know him. I just knew he was an employee there.
Yeah, that was a beautiful service.
Edward, I have to ask. First and foremost, I agree with the scorecard. That's what I'm doing in Microsoft right now. In my business, when I talk to either the CEOs or business owners, I try to explain the difference between leading and managing. And I think scorecards help business owners and CEOs lead versus manage. Some people say work on your business versus in your business. It's the same thing. And scorecards help you lead. But what I was going to say is it will be lovely. Maybe you can invite your son to give us a use case of what worked. How is the scorecard change the dynamic within the company, and what were some of the lessons learned or the best practices that we might learn from too, because you can always learn something new. I found out every project I do gives me another aha moment that I then fold it into my business growth platform.
Yeah. Your son would be a great podcast guest, actually, Ed.
Yeah, he may have that recorded only because I think he's talked on that topic.
I would hope so.
3 or 4 times at the national meetings for the recruiting industry.
Yeah. Steve, fire away, man.
Add a couple of things from 10 minutes ago or whenever Ed was talking about accountants. So I hang out with a bunch of accountants, and most of them aren't terribly useful. But one of them that I'm associated with basically says the same thing that Ed said, and she was a CFO in 3 fairly significant businesses, and almost exactly the same words. She walks the business, and a good accountant, CFO, understands the business probably better than anyone else and is essentially the number 2 person in the business if they're doing their job appropriately, which she has done. So that's one point. Another point, I'm associated with a business insights, business analytics company. I guess the conclusion I've reached recently, since I'm slow, is you really can't have an optimally run business without a good set of KPIs and whatnot. And it doesn't have to be just at the top. I sat through a discussion with this guy a week or so ago, and he's done a bunch of business insight dashboard type things for manufacturing companies. And in this particular case that he was demonstrating to me, they deconstructed it, and there's big displays out on the shop floor with a bunch of KPIs that all of the people operating machines understand and look at. And the data is updated on an instantaneous basis so that everyone knows how everyone is doing constantly, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. Absolutely. Those well-run businesses. Which book is it where he talks about the case where they have all of the score? The CEO had to be dragged to the understanding, and then they did an experiment and they put all of the corporate results up on the wall. Gosh, I can't think of the name. I think the author is McFarlane. Another fabulous book. Maybe we'll add that one back into the curriculum. Anyway, but transparency, what you're getting at, Steve, is transparency, right? Transparency. Public businesses are absolutely transparent. We don't know how to make Coca-Cola, but we know everything else there is to know about Coca-Cola, right? We know everything there is to know. We can find out almost everything there is to know about Microsoft, not the research they're doing, not their secret sauce, but everything else, right? Because they have to share that with the public markets. If it works for the public markets, why the hell would it not work? Excuse me. Why the heck would it not work for a private business? And when we can get if we can get a CEO, and this is part of the qualification. I don't know, Larry, you and I have talked about this. When we're qualifying someone, do I want to work with them? Are they willing to be transparent? Vulnerability is great. And then we know we need to also have transparency and a willingness to take their cards and say, okay, well, maybe I only have a pair of twos. That transparency that you're getting at, Steve, can be transformative. And if we can install it, go ahead, Phil, man.
Another quick point. That's doing KPIs for the heck of it is okay, but ideally, in the textbook way to do this is what is the business's strategic intent?
Yes.
And then identify KPIs that give you some indication whether or not you're going in the right direction to accomplish your strategic intent.
Strategic intent. Absolutely, man.
Yes.
And bringing it full circle, I've used AI quite a bit in helping clients develop KPIs. So you can literally type in or have them type in, since we don't want to do for the clients necessarily, their strategic intent and ask our ChatGPT to create industry-specific KPIs for consideration. And so instead of starting from scratch, you let somebody else do the heavy lifting and you can tweak it as needed.
Tasty catering. Yeah, man.
With them?
Go ahead, Phil. Kathy, that is a fabulous point, and I'm going to circle back to that. Phil just put Tasty Catering in the chat. Go ahead, Phil.
They're a company here locally that I was able to go in and just chat with, but they do this. They are totally transparent. Everything is up on the wall for everybody to see. When I did some research before I went in, one of the brothers talks in a TED Talk about an employee who said, basically, he came in and ragged on her. And she said, let me just take you over here to the core values on the wall. Show me how you're expressing the number 2 core value here, and called them out. So when I went there, he said, you want to meet that lady? Because she still works here. But everything is open and they are extremely successful. We're walking around. There's an older gentleman in the back washing dishes, and he flies up from Mexico in times of, their busy times to help out. That's what he feels he's a part of. But so it can be done at a privately held organization. They just have to want to do it that way. But if you do some research on Tasty Catering, fascinating business.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Yeah.
So are we in the KPIs, certainly the interconnectivity showing the shop floor connected to the top floor, and the way that all works out is we have to help the owner think about, okay, driving the mechanisms of the exit planning, right? Probably a foreign concept to most of these guys, why we're trying to teach them how to increase the value, transferable value of the business. Many of the metrics are focusing on are really productivity things, may or may not parlay into transferable value. So I think that's where the bringing in not only the standard things that you might find on ChatGPT, but then also the nuances along the way of how do we building transferable value and how can we help the owner bring that to get from underneath the bushel, right? Because there's often discussion. I'm not even going to tell my wife I'm selling the business till I sell the business. It's inbred into these entrepreneurs. They're scared to death about talking about this subject. And we have to kind of make it safe. We have to figure out a way to, start heating up the frog, put them in lukewarm water, right? So what are those things that we can bring to the transferable value metrics that somehow feel safe, and it's not just lining the owner's pocket, right? Because they feel awkward. Everybody's kind of like, okay, well, they're just doing this for the big man. We got to show the sustainability piece of it has to do with their security going forward and their job and retention of the employees in the organization. So give me thoughts on that. Are we missing something to just talk?
Listen, Joe, you just made a fantastic point. Let's go back to public companies. Public companies share the wealth, right? Share the wealth with their employees, right? Their senior leadership. If you work for, even for well-run private businesses, you can earn equity, real or real or synthetic.
Phantom stock all over.
Right? You can participate in a well-run business You got to run. Listen, Phil, so great to see you, man.
Nice
Be
to see you
well.
all. Thank you.
I'll
Take
see you
care.
soon. Thanks. So this goes to vulnerability and transparency, and
Yeah,
guys,
but George, not many companies share the wealth.
That's correct.
Not many privately held companies share the wealth.
That's correct.
And not all public companies share the wealth.
That's unfortunately also correct.
Okay. So to Joe's point, how do we communicate that? The transparency, where in using Joe's words, when working for the big man, how do you bridge that gap? It's an interesting question.
It is. And it's one of the reasons that I personally, it's a personal prejudice. I put sharing the wealth. You'll find sharing the wealth in a couple of spots, like a couple of very critical spots inside the methodology, because when I would, you're right that they don't. I would theorize, maybe we should figure out a way to capture this data. It's probably already out there. But I would theorize that the businesses that are best in class, by and large, mostly, essentially all even, we do share the wealth. And so you can be a successful company and not do it, but a common trait of best in class businesses is sharing the wealth. And which is why it shows up in these great measures of a company's future performance.
Well, I'm sure that Ed can comment on this through his valuation work, but companies that are ESOPs, as an example, are much more profitable than companies that are not.
Oh my gosh. Look,
there's been studies upon studies done with that.
That's what we're anticipating.
Who here can get King Arthur flour at multiple grocery stores in their area? Right? I don't know if you guys are bakers. I happen to be, but you can get King Arthur flour everywhere. King Arthur Baking, rebranded, is an ESOP, and they have gone from a little flour company in Norwich. They're still a flour company in Norwich, Vermont, to be a national. They set the standard for quality baking goods, baking products across the country. At your point is really what. Same with Hypertherm. Same with Criari. Same with and those are businesses you may not have heard of. Trust me, they are all around you. Hypertherm makes plasma cutting, and they've diversified into a whole bunch of other stuff. Hypertherm is a national. It's a national treasure. That's such a fantastic company. Same with a business like Criari, which you've probably never heard of, but who is designing I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about it, but they are designing things that are so cool and that are going to help transform some of our military capabilities. Sorry. I'm on a roll. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
it's great you're on a roll. I don't have a lot of deep knowledge around ESOP. For example, I have a sense of when a company is not ready, not in position to become an ESOP company. I get that. But I would appreciate a learning opportunity, not on Coffee Klatsch, but as a 90-minute workshop on ESOPs. Ed, Barry, you guys have that knowledge. I think I'm the only one. It would help me because I just don't know enough to look at a company and say they should be in an ESOP.
Let's do that, Larry. Let's do that, and I'll see if I can pull in Michael Poole, who is an ESOP specialist. I mean, he's an investment banker, but he happens to, and we've never talked about why, but it'd be fun to have a panel, maybe 3 people, talking about ESOPs. Fire away, guys.
I've got another guy that I could reach out to, George. Sorry. Okay.
Cool.
In the world of lack of bright, shiny apples, right? How often do we think that that the market's not ready they're pulling back, the cost of interest rates continue to remain high? This may be just the thing that gets us through this, is the activity around ESOPs and the ability for that to be a self-generated funding source that the banks get behind. The SBA is all behind that. I mean, they are they're licking their chops to loan money at a relatively good rate. I mean, not unbelievably, VC rate stuff, but maybe, just maybe, that's the pot of money that's available. That's a technology. It's a tremendous savings tax wise, and all that goes right to the bottom line and to help finance this deal. So you're right. We are woefully inadequately advised on ESOPs, and how to consult with our clients about that. So I second that, whatever that is, motion is. And
okay, well, we'll put together, I'll commit to you that we'll put together a panel and we'll get it on the books. Silvana, go ahead. You've been trying to jump in.
Okay. It's very interesting that you brought ESOP. I just went through an exit board with a company that was considering ESOP, and then they were looking at it very carefully. And if I caught it correctly, the question was, when do we do it? Or when do we say it? Or I think that what triggers an ESOP, what I found out, and I'm not a specialist, but I learned a lot from this. And there is another gentleman that Ron Everett brought to the table, which I thought he was very good. He's a lawyer, an ESOP lawyer, and has done a lot of them, specializes in them. So we can bring, Jim to the table too for that 3-way panel. Mm-hmm. I think that from all the considerations of to ESOP or not, I think absolutely doing right by your team or by the people the leadership team that you brought in, it's a one of the important parts. But I think there are a lot of tax considerations and timing considerations and, credits. So I think, the whole ESOP thing, it's not one size fits all. I definitely think that it's not all altruistic. Let's face it. We're not here just for the altruism. I just think it all depends on what the owner's goals are and the timing of when they want to do the transaction and what's in it for whom. So I'm a big mapper. I like to map the stakeholders on every transaction. And I think that in this case, they are seriously considering ESOP because of a partial ESOP. And I think it's 33%. That's the minimum
you can do a partial ESOP. People, a lot of people out in the GP don't understand that you can sell half the company, sell 30%.
So the minimum is 33%. You cannot do less than that. And in this particular case, they're considering it as a way for them to get some money off the table, to get the tax credit, but also to allow them to have like another 2 or 3 years where their valuation might go from 35 to 45 or 50, because they have the strategic capacity opportunity there. They just need the time to get it there. So in this case, how it worked. But going back from our perspective, it'll be nice for us to sort of like create a cheat sheet or like a sort of like a use case where you say, okay, these are all the levers for the ESOP and this is how it's used, or these are the things that matter.
Yeah. And out of the panel, and we're right at the bottom of the hour, out of the panel, so to ESOP or not to ESOP, I love that title. And I think if we have an accountant, an attorney, and an investment banker, it could be really a fascinating conversation. So I have to scoot at the bottom of the hour as well. Guys, what a fun and wide-ranging conversation. Thank you so much.
I posted a parody on Kinsey in the chat, and it's kind of funny. You're going to talk about young people in the consulting world. It's funny.
I have now pasted it into my other. Okay, guys, I've got to scoot. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next week. I hope you have a great week, and keep on keeping on. Thanks, guys. Ciao for now.
Lovely to see you guys.
Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye. Thank you.